Welcome to another mega exciting Kingscrusher radio show. So this is Tuesday around 9:10. Okay, so we're going to carry on this week with the amazing series on Garry Kasparov's great games. And I have another 3 games to go over this week. So this is an interesting one. His opponent was Anatoly Karpov, not a majorly accomplished player, but it was an opponent in USSR 1978. Let's have a look. So Kasparov playing black, played okay, his opponent played e4. Kasparov played the Karakan. I've actually got one of his books on the Karakan. I think he was a co-author. Very interesting. Some dynamic, aggressive ideas in the Karakan. We see here d4, d5, e takes, c takes. So this is the Panov-Botvinnik attack. This system, Panov-Botvinnik, c4. Kasparov played knight f6. Now we have knight c3, so white's putting more pressure on d5. Let's actually add a bit just in case. That'll be handy. Okay. e6 supporting d5, knight f3. And here we have a pin, bishop b4 black. This is the main move actually, to pin that knight, bishop b4. And quite often white plays c takes d. But here we see a rarer continuation, queen b3. Kasparov protects the bishop, keeping that pin. And in this position, actually, this has been seen a few times before, but a slightly rarer move again, bishop d3. Okay, now both sides castle. D takes c4, isolating white's queen's pawn. Queen takes c4. Bishop e7. We see now a3, knight a5 hitting the queen drops back to a2, b6. It looks quite logical to put the bishop on this diagonal. It's a nice diagonal. b4, knight goes back to c6, rook d1, bishop b7 now. Black is not yet threatening anything in particular. We see bishop c4, and it looks as though white might be playing for d5 now. You see all these pieces. d5 looks to be quite well supported in this position. Okay, so against this we see the move queen c7. If you've just joined, Kasparov's opponent here is a relatively unknown player. This is quite early in Garry Kasparov's career. This is back in 1978. His opponent is a player called Anatoly Karpov. You would have never, I doubt anyone's heard of him. Okay, so we see d5 now. So white's playing energetically in the center. It seems, very harmonious in a way, just to play for d5 here. But this might have been a small mistake to play d5, although tempting. Better, apparently, knight b5 might have been more prudent. And say queen e2. This might have been a more prudent approach. But we see in this game d5. Okay, knight e5 now, hitting the bishop. Of course, that is a major threat. Knight takes e5. It's played queen takes, hitting the knight. And no now that the f3 knight is missing, which means h2 automatically, you have to check. It's not crude anymore. When the f3 knight is missing, it's not crude anymore to think about h2 as a softer spot than usual. So in this position, in fact, white plays d takes e6, perhaps happy, you know, he's breaking from this diagonal, but you know, black to play here. Yeah, what would you play with black in this position? So I've given you a clue. Do you do an ordinary recapture, or would you do something else in this position? What would you play in this position? I can give you the name, by the way, on stream. I mean, it's AMBARCUMIAN. Okay, so black to play, and it actually leads to an advantage now for black, this next move. Can you see what black can play? What would you play with black? Now, on PlayChess here, Sprungtier, you say bishop d6. We'll investigate that. Anybody else? Knight g4 is mentioned on stream. Bishop d3, I think you meant bishop d6. Let's have a quick look. Bishop d6 wasn't the move I was looking for. White can actually play f4 here, apparently. Or take first, then play f4. This should be, actually, I know you're losing the knight, but then the bishop, and it's actually, apparently this is equal, this position, believe it or not. Yeah, it's quite complex. Bishop d5 to try and deflect the bishop from f1, so queen e1 would be mate. Or white might have an advantage now after rook takes. White, if anyone's got an advantage, it's white apparently, fractional. No, that wasn't the move actually, although tempting, and it is related to the soft spot. But actually knight g4 was played, and it does seem like the engines like this move in this particular position. Actually, so one obvious question, by the way, about queen takes c3, because this was a piece sack, right? This move, bishop b2, might give white some sort of initiative, which is, you know, dangerous. Maybe even the queen's threatened. We're being trapped in some lines. So Kasparov not only avoids the temptation to take the knight, he's going for the king. He's just going for it. So that's a really good thing. Sometimes I've had this myself, and you may have had that in your own games. You can try and analyze winning material on the queen side, but sometimes it's just more rewarding to go for the opponent's king, which is fundamentally the weakest piece on the board, especially when it hasn't got too many defenders around it. So ideally that should be like a red flag to the ball, that there's not too many defenders around the white king here. So we see knight g4. Okay, so the immediate threats include, you know, taking, and then bishop takes g2. So white does take the time to take this pawn with check. Okay, and now white plays bishop d5, trying to at least defend g2. When the queen comes here, it's defending g2. Kasparov takes on h2, king f1. But now this is actually quite a clever move in this position, which guarantees black a very big advantage. It looks as though white has covered his other secondary soft spot g2 in this position, but there's a very clever resourceful move here played by Kasparov. So black to play here. Can you, and I'll give you you know, 200 points for this move if you can get it. So what does black play in this position? Really nice. This position here. Is white defending his secondary soft spot? So already h2, the king's driven a bit, but what do you play here? Whoa! Alright, someone's hit it on stream actually. Not the obvious bishop takes d4, although that does actually favour black. It's not as crushing, it's not as incisive. I like that word, incisive. I've been meaning to use that more, by the way, incisive. It's the most incisive is rook takes f7. So black is immediately threatening rook takes f2, winning the queen. And if the king here, queen g1 is mate, right? Now, it's trying to distract the bishop away, yeah, from g2. If bishop takes f7, then this is actually a forced mate. Queen takes g2, this didn't happen. Queen g1, queen f2, this position, queen e3, bishop e4. It's a forced mate in 6 from here. Bishop f6. Bishop takes d4. It's a forced mate in 4 now. Queen takes d4. And I hope you all saw this. Queen d3, bishop c6, and queen takes b5. That was actually a forced mate in 11. According to engines here, by the way. Yeah, this is... So bishop takes f7 is a forced mate in 11. I hope you spotted that. No, seriously. The Fritz chess engine, I mean, says this is a forced mate in 11. So the king's just been taken across the board in this line by force. And note the use of the bishops coming across and the disconnection issues. You know, sometimes we kind of bypass these issues. We let the opponent off. Oh, they've got a bit of disconnection. No, Kasparov is not letting anyone off these disconnection issues. His resources, his tactics, put a strong highlighter to any tactical concerns white has, disconnection issues of the pieces. So this is just a no-go line. Bishop takes f7. We see bishop takes b7 instead, but now we have check, rook takes f2, and okay, if we take the queen, that would not be that hot. Well, it is actually quite good as well, but probably better is to play the check here first, which seems to allow the resource queen d5, but that doesn't help black. He's still going to be losing things. White played bishop d5. They're about the same strength, these moves. Bishop d5. I mean, white's losing the queen anyway. If he plays queen d5, we take that. And it's not a great continuation there anyway. But let's go with game one. So bishop d5, rook takes a2. Believe it or not, because hold on, isn't the queen hanging here? But then black takes this rook and is threatening knight f2 in this position, winning more material. And here actually white resigned after rook takes a1. It seems this is at move 26. White actually resigned. Okay, white is the exchange down and a pawn down. And you might think, hang on, isn't there a bit of life left in the possession? Let's try and avoid knight f2 check as an example. Then check here using the pin is picking up more material. After king b2, knight takes d5. This is picking up more material, because if king takes, then we just take here, piece up. And if knight takes, we can play rook takes. And if rook takes, then again we're a bishop up. There's no back row mate. We can come back to d8. So it seems, so that's a sample of how bitter the position is now. What else does white do? If he plays rook g1 as another example, bishop f6 is threatening all sorts. What does white do here? This is a very bad position. Can't can't get out of this stuff very easily. Black's going to just cash out soon. It's just hopeless. So that was an interesting tactical game, and showed White had an enthusiasm. It seems, you know, in some respects White was playing a sort of thematic break in the center, but it kind of backfired on his own king safety. So that was a very interesting game, which is not so famous, but it's in some people's game collections for, you know, Kasparov's best games. It's an early game, 1978, early in his career. Okay, I'm going to show you now a more famous game of Kasparov, and it's still early in his career. Okay, now this is against a grandmaster, well, to be Lev Albert. So this was played in the URS Select 1978. I'll give you a bit of bio now is available on Lev Albert. And this is the beautiful thing about showing games against, you know, with strong players on both sides. There's an interesting, you know, I like the interesting aspects of chess biography to find out more about chess and culture, not just the games themselves, but maybe also even the locations. But if you know a bit more about the chess culture, Lev Albert is 70 years old, still alive. He was born in Russia, awarded the IM title in 1976, so he was at least an IM for this game. And actually he was a GM, and the GM title in 1977, so a year before. He was just the GM the year before this game, yeah? He won the Ukrainian Championship in 1972, 73, 74. He played in 5 USSR championships, with third as his best showing. In 1979, he defected to the USA and led the US Olympiad team in 1980 at Malta. He also won the US Championship in 1984, 1985, 1990. He also drew an 8-game match with the then British champion Jonathan Spillman in 1986. He won the US Open in 1987 and 89. So Lev Albert is a fascinating player, and like cautionary defector as well. So okay, so let's see this game. C4 from Lev Albert. Knight F6. Knight C3. We go into a King's Indian defense. So pay attention. Bishop G5 here. This is the Averbach variation. Averbach. You know, if it doesn't hurt to pronounce Averbach, you're not pronouncing it correctly. Okay, I think I've gone over that recently. But I'm going to just say Averbach from now on. The Averbach variation of the King's Indian defense. This has some venom. Okay, so we have C5, D5, H6, Bishop F4, E6. So black seems to be navigating it to a Benoni pawn structure when there's a potentially weak pawn on D6, but you're getting the E-file pressure. But white is not allowing that here. White's not going into Benoni with, say, Knight F3. This position would be, for example, white could choose still here E takes anyway to avoid the, you know, the Benoni structure. But actually D takes here was played, which is actually the most common approach here, because it's asking the question about the D6 pawn. So this is already dynamic play from Kasparov in regards to the D6 pawn. He's sacrificing it. Bishop takes E6, bishop takes D6. But also there's the question about, isn't white now forking the rook and the pawn? Rook E8. Now, this is probably too much to take on C5. White played Knight F3, trying to castle, etc. Often a good idea. If bishop takes C5, there's some play for black with Queen A5. which might be undesirable. This position might be undesirable because black is getting a little bit of play here in this line. Say f3, because, well, this is not very nice. f3, let's just go with this. Black's got a bit of play in this line. If b5 here, queen a5, it's a bit of a gambit. It's a bit of a gambit line, the whole thing. So it's actually technically possible for white to take on c5, but it's very rarely played. Usually players with white play knight f3. You know, there's over 100 in live with knight f3 and only 2 with bishop takes c5. So it's very rare to be greedy. Knight f3 is the main move as played in the game. Knight c6, and white usually castles. Again, it's very rare for players with white to take this, because we have queen a5 here with the idea of knight takes e4. This is far too much counterplay for black, this position. You can't have this position with white. It just backfires. This position here is just backfiring. It's not nice. So forget taking c5 in this position. White usually castles. Queen a5. So it's one pawn which has been gambited. And it gives black, you know, potential counterplay on the d file. So we see knight d2, rook e d8, knight b3, protecting the bishop and hitting the queen, queen b6. If black's given one more move, knight e8, and this is a really nasty pin, we have knight a4 not letting black alone, queen b4. Here it's tricky, you know, if queen a6, then white's getting a big advantage with taking here, and e5, cementing the bishop. So in this position, queen b4 is necessary. Okay, hitting the knight. You know, if a3, I think we'll just take on a4. We have knight b takes c5. Bishop takes c4, that's another point. Aggressive queen. Still black is a pawn down for the moment. Bishop takes, queen takes. Black is a pawn down. 2 pawns down in fact, but now knight takes e4, getting 1 pawn back. But look at the ferociousness of black's pieces. This is well worth entering, this whole thing, because black's pieces are really quite active. There's no bad piece for black. Technically the engine's like white still, so slight advantage given to white. Rook c1. Yeah, this looks as though, you know, c6 is an issue. Queen's got to play to hold on to c6. Queen b5. Queen a6 was also possible, it seems, just to hold the c6 knight. But hold on, what's going on here? Knight takes, winning the exchange, but then we're back to this horrible pin. Did white have an alternative? Actually, there does appear to be a technical alternative here. Knight ac5. So if knight takes, we can just take with the knight. Knight ac5 seems possible. If knight d4, threatening knight takes d6, and knight e2 check. It's tricky. a4, a5, knight takes e4. It's hairy. It's hairy, but basically, yeah, black ends up having a very nice position anyway. Yeah, a lot of white's troubles do stem from this bishop on d6 here. So the way white plays it, white plays knight takes d8. Bishop's a problem. Queen c2. Counter-attacking though on c6. It's just really sharp stuff. Knight d4. Queen takes e4. Knight e2 check. Takes on c1. rook takes d6, and we're about equal materially. Black is a pawn down, but black has great pressure here. The knight seems a bit strange on a4. Possibly b3 needs to be considered, but also queen c2 is given as one of the strongest moves. It was played here, so it holds the knight and keeps authority on the c file. Queen g5, threatening immediately rook d2. An invasion to the 7th rank is to be avoided. It's parried with rook d1. Now things get interesting here. Black to play in this position. There's a classic back row vulnerability here. So can you guess black's move? It's not amazingly spectacular or anything, it's just logical. And it gives black a clear advantage now. Black to play. What does Kasparov play in this position? If I give you 5 seconds. Any ideas? It's a simple move to try and exploit the back row. So I'm hoping some of you are awake. Anybody awake? Oh, there is a 20-second delay. Yeah, just queen f5. Just queen f5. Trying to get the queen away from d1. I told you it wasn't spectacular. Okay, so queen c1. But now black's nabbing a pawn. Rook takes, queen takes, nabbing a pawn. So after all of that complications with d6, black's actually better here after all that, because this bishop's fantastic. White's left with this silly knight on a4 against that lovely natural bishop striking across the huge diagonal. We have queen g1, queen c2 hitting the knight, picking up another pawn basically. 2 pawns up. How to defend this poor poxy knight? If white didn't play queen g1, it's a difficult position actually. If h3, bishop e5 threatens things, you know, eventually around white's king. It's dangerous. Just as an example, queen c1, h5. We can lock down the king side. This bishop is just fantastic. So say the knight goes here. I mean, this is just a very nice position for black. It's very pleasant. So anyway, let's not veer too far. Queen g1 was played, not h3. Queen g1. So losing that other pawn, basically. Queen takes a2, knight c5. So 2 pawns down now. So Kasparov is winning against this grandmaster. Can he convert this? 1978. So when was Kasparov born again? Anyone know? I'm going to look it up on Wiki. Sorry, I'm going to get you the age. Sorry, he was very young for this game. So Kasparov was born April 1963, yeah? So he's about 15 for this game. 15. We have queen b1. Bishop d4. Knight goes back. Queen e3. Knight b4. h5. Can the GM really save this position? Can he? We've got Harry the H pawn coming at him. Who can defend Harry the H pawn? It's very difficult. Knight c2. Queen takes b3, winning yet another pawn. But we have now a technical position. check was played first, stronger than queen takes c2 actually, to drag the queen back. Slightly stronger than queen takes c2 it seems, because here white could fight on a bit more with check, and be a nuisance basically. Check, be a nuisance. So this was better to drag the queen back before taking the knight here. Much better. So an outside A pawn, which is about to be taken now. Check. And then we go into a king and pawn ending. Is this trivial? The king comes up, center, and yeah, it looks as though black should be able to break in with Zugzwang soon. f4 is played here. Key move. If white goes king g4, we just play king e4, and then f3 is winning, for example. We just heard the pawn. Okay, so king f2. Now we have a bit of triangulation coming up here to gain a tempo. Because if king e3 here, it throws away the win actually. This would just be a draw. Doesn't matter about these two. This is just a draw apparently. King e1. Say here. King f2. The win would be thrown away. Because white can always control g3. So let's go back. Important not to throw away the win at this point. So king e3 doesn't do anything. We have king f5 in fact, which actually, to be honest, king f5 has got it at 0 as well. This I don't know if Fritz has got this wrong. I'm not entirely sure. I assume Fritz might be correct. Which is no, I'm getting confused. Okay, do I have the right game score? Hold on a sec. King g1, king e5. Oh boy. Oh boy. There might be a story here. According to Fritz, white doesn't have to lose this position, funny enough. Guess Fritz's next move. White actually resigned. White resigned here. Oh boy. Sorry, I didn't. Okay. Now, how does white draw? White to draw according to Fritz. White to play and draw. White, well, not white to play. Sorry, white to play. White to play. No, white to play and draw. There's a move which actually draws. Maybe he fluffed it up. It's possible he thought he was just losing this. Sometimes you can give up hope or something. I'm going to just make sure about the story of the endgame here. I might have screwed this up. I might need to run this through a different engine. Fritz could be getting this wrong. Sorry, I'm going to have to stop this Fritz engine. Pardon me. I need a sanity check. Because there's a non-move pruning issue that I'm aware of. I'm going to use Houdini, right? Which hasn't got non-move pruning. Yeah. Jeez. It comes up so much. Look, there's a bug in engines. Yeah, it's not necessarily just because engines don't have table bases. There's a null move pruning bug in certain engines, and Houdini doesn't have that at all. This position here is all winning according to commercial Houdini engine. This is all winning. Okay. This is just absolutely winning. Let's have a look. King F5, King G1, King E5. Now let's go with King F1. The Houdini engine has this as totally winning. It doesn't have any null move pruning issue. King E4. It reckons King E4 or even King F5 both win. If we look at King E4 first, King F2, King F4, King F1, King G3, King E1. What else? If King G1, King takes H3, King F2, King G4, King G1, H3, King F2, H2, and we're winning. I have no idea why Fritz was giving that a 0. I think it's to do with null move pruning issue. If here, well, either this or King G2 is winning. Wow. Okay. Yeah, this is all winning. For some reason, I don't know, got convinced there it had a point or something. No, yeah, King E4 here. Now, if White wants to fluff things up and have a draw, then I think King F4. No, that's still winning as well. Whatever Black does, he can win this. He can just triangulate again and just win this. Get to this position, he's winning. So the moral of the story: if you're analysing games on Play Chess, sometimes risk using Houdini for the end games. Okay, it's just all winning. Yeah, Black's getting in. As I originally said, Black's getting in to the position here. Does anyone think this is drawing? It's not drawing. It's not drawing. I don't know why Fritz. I swear Fritz was giving this a 0. It's sometimes you've got to be careful with the engines, and I got convinced. Okay, it's not. And it might happen with Stockfish as well, because they've ruled out on the interface for null move pruning. There's certain compositions which Stockfish just cannot solve. But you know, it's Zugzwang as a weapon is very prevalent in endgames. Okay, so anyway, let's go on to another game. Now the reason, by the way, I've been using Fritz as the default one is it's generally more stable and I don't hear my fans running as much. But we'll try with this next game to look with Houdini. Okay, but okay, what can we take from this game? The game was really razor sharp. Let's go back just to review the game story. There was a razor sharp pawn sack in this game, and it seems after the major complications, Black did get, you know, an advantage. So after the all the complications, and I think more the story of the game is to do with Kasparov's bio. This was an early grandmaster he defeated with the black pieces, so this was a great achievement for the young Kasparov, this game. And you know, he didn't let the grandmaster off even in the king and pawn ending, so it was actually winning for Kasparov all the way through here. There was no possibility of White drawing this. Okay, so it's historical, of historical importance as well. Okay, let's carry on this other game I wanted to show you. So this is still early in Kasparov's career. So this game is against Lev Polgiavsky. This third game I'd like to show you. Lev Polgiavsky, who I personally felt a bit sorry for Polgiavsky, because I've seen another one of their encounters, and Polgiavsky's pet line, the Sicilian, was simply slayed by Kasparov's preparation. And I know Kasparov's got certain people think a lot of his games are decided by preparation. He's like one of the most prepared grandmasters ever. But yeah, but this is not that particular game. It's not the Polgiavsky variation slayed in this game. Let's have a look what it was. So Lev Polgiavsky. So this is in 1978. Polgiavsky has got a great track record. 1953 he took second place in a strong Russian tournament, gaining his master norm. Twice Soviet champion in 1967, 68. So that's like 10 years before this game. Twice finished runner-up. He participated in 5 candidate matches. Excellent record in Olympiads as well. One of the most influential theoreticians of his day, and contributed heavily to the development of the Sicilian Najdorf. And it's crazy, actually. You know his Polgiavsky variation? I had one of his books on it, and I thought it was just fascinating how Polgiavsky was evolving this system. Sorry, this is a sideline to the game while we're here. I can't help it. Okay, let's have a look at the Polgiavsky variation in Sicilian, yeah? Now in the game e6, but let's quickly, I'm going to show you the Polgiavsky variation in Sicilian, because I had this book called In like the Grandmaster's Laboratory. It's in the Najdorf. There's a super sharp thing, which I'm not sure. It's a super sharp thing which you might never have played. E6, F4, B5. I think it goes like this: E5 takes, and you play here Queen C7. This is Polgiavsky variation territory, and he just evolved a whole load of stuff here. I thought it was fascinating. I think I was looking at this book for months, but you know, I don't think I gained any insight into chess or anything whatsoever. It was just fascinating to see how someone evolves their own like pet opening from this razor sharp position in the Najdorf, entrenched in the Najdorf. So if takes here, we have check. This is the main line. Bishop e2. The point is you get this dark square bishop, and it's very scary because white's got such a huge, you know, you basically, I mean, I also thought is this guy Polgiavsky is a bit nuts to have wanted to explore this, because if you look, I mean, all the black pieces are mostly on the first rank. What black has done is got the bishop pair and the dark square bishop, but you have to use resources like rook a7 for survival. This is actually the main move here, rook a7, and you know this position is thought to be a slight advantage for white, but I don't know. For me, I mean, it looks superficially as it's like a terrifying initiative for white, but if black can survive it, he's got the bishop pair and the dark square bishop. So I don't know if any of you will ever play this Polgiavsky variation. It's fascinating. It's just fascinating, the evolution of it, how this grandmaster would do this. This is like one of the first major like theoreticians. I mean, to do this in a line in the Najdorf. But anyway, let's go back to the game. In this game, actually he didn't play d6. He played e6. But I'm sure we'll get to the other game where Kasparov sort of beat him in his own pet line. So e6 in this game. We have d4, open Sicilian, cd, knight takes d4, a6, knight c3, queen c7, bishop e2, b5. This is fairly, looks much more solid actually. This is just Sicilian can variations territory, as in K-A-N. Sicilian can, bishop f3, bishop b7. Okay, knight c6, pretty standard stuff so far. e5. Now this move e5 was slightly unusual, I think. Usually queen e2. This is more dynamic. e5. Actually, Kasparov playing white. Let's flip the board, by the way. Kasparov is playing white. Let's go back to the white perspective. He plays e5. Black took e5. So white's got a certain pressure for the pawn, rook e1, and lead in development. Now, it's a very strange, artificial looking move, and I must comment on this actually. It seems, to me at least, the young Kasparov often was capable of very strange looking artificial moves, but they do have an iron logic or just tactical justification to them. So, you know, he's like almost as though there is an influence from Mikhail Botvinnik, that there is a logic to his moves, but that, you know, they look almost counterintuitive sometimes. And this move looks really counterintuitive here, but it puts great pressure on the underdeveloped black position. Yeah. So white's play here. Can you see, what do you reckon Kasparov played in this position? The young Kasparov. White's play, it does put black under, it does cause some issues, some problems here. What does white play in this position? It's a strange looking one. Remember, black already has weaknesses on the dark squares. Are we all agreed? Black has weaknesses on the dark squares. In the can variation, that's typical of the can. You know, if you can sometimes try and exploit these dark squares in the can variation. But this next move, what would you play here? Yeah, it is. Alright, not bishop g5, although bishop g5, I'm sure it's a reasonably good move. But maybe black reacts with bishop e7. You're not immediately causing too many problems, because bishop takes, knight takes. I mean, there's a bit of initiative, but I think black could be able to like safely castle. No, actually, this move causes immediate like problems. Bishop h5, using that pin. So white is threatening. Rook takes e6 here. You know, if knight f6, we just play rook takes e6, check. And here, knight e4 apparently is interesting to consider. For example, knight takes, queen takes. This position, it looks strange, very strange. But white should be getting an advantage. You know, to try and play this. White should be okay with an advantage. No, not there. Pardon me. Rook d6. This is crazy stuff. But follow this through. This is dangerous for black. Too dangerous for black. So white ends up with a small advantage because black has to give back the exchange. So anyway, yeah, bishop h5. It's strange, but it's backed up by tons of analysis. This move. I mean, what we could be witnessing here is actually a product of preparation. Actually, I mean, this could be like a prepared move. Bishop h5. If black plays, if black plays g6 here. Say black plays g6. Queen d4 just pounces on the rook. This is too dangerous for black. Just tear the king to shreds. Black king's not going to castle anywhere. So it's strange looking. I mean, I don't know if you agree with me. It looks strange, bishop h5, but there's a lot of venom to it. Black reacted with bishop e7. And it looks as though, hang on, what about rook e6? But the point is, that was played. g6. It looks as though white's got a lot of pieces hanging now. This rook steps back. And you might ask, well, hold on, what about this? This. Black actually played rook d8 here. On g takes, it's scary looking because black's king is stuck in the center. Is it winning for white? The engine's not that convinced actually. I mean, it's giving queen d4, f6. I mean, not f6, we just step it off. f6. This position is black's. Is black casting? It's dangerous looking anyway. So for whatever reason, anyway, that was delayed. Rook d8 was played, and we have queen f3. Now taking here is under less favourable circumstances in a way. Black actually tried to gain another tempo on the queen. If taking here, bishop f4, queen b6, bishop e5. This is more dangerous for black than what we've seen before, actually. If here we just take this off, big advantage for white. That's more dangerous than what we've seen before. So for the moment here, black played c5, hitting the queen. We have bishop f4 hitting black's queen in return. Queen b6. And now a really interesting decision. Usually you'd think that the rook, chasing a rook is not worth two minor pieces like a knight and bishop, yeah? But this is exactly what Kasparov goes into. He plays queen g3. He's wanting to pick up, give up two whole bishops for just a rook. Isn't this crazy? G takes, losing one bishop. Yes, he has the fork and he picks up the rook, but he's just given, and the queen's come off. Would you think that this is a good deal for white? The engine actually thinks this is about equal. What do you guys think? Who's better? If I asked you who's better, it's a strange imbalance to volunteer to give the opponent two pieces for the rook. Who do you reckon's better in this position? The engine intriguingly has it about equal. I think there are some problems here that black's pawn structure in particular is shattered. You've got to factor that into your evaluation. There's also a puncture point with a4 which might easily quickly break into the queen side if black's not careful. So it's not so easy to evaluate this, not without connection to these other aspects. So let's see what happens in this position. We have check, and the rooks are quickly in the center. Check, and this already wins the bishop pair from black already. If king e8, rook d6 is nasty in this particular position. It stops the knight coming out. We're just going to take it. And if king f8, rook b6 is nasty. You see, black hasn't got his rook out yet or the knight out yet. This is just big problems. So this position, if the king had gone to e8, this position here after rook d6 is actually advantage to white. Okay, so we have actually king c7, check, gets the bishop pair away from black, but surely black can think about moving soon. Not yet, because the rook takes e7. So we have h6, grovelly looking. h6. White took on h5 now, so he's picking up a pawn. The idea of h6 is revealed to play rook h7. I know it's terrible, but that's one way of getting the rook out of the game. It's just, yeah. Okay, so rook h e5, king d7, rook retreats, rook g7. The rook is in the game officially. Hooray! The rook is in the game. The knight's still on g8 protecting the bishop. Check, king c7. But now this queen side is subject to probing. Rook a3. Rook g6. The rook is actually functionally doing something now, defending a pawn. Rook f3. Keeping the pressure. Bishop f6. c3 protecting b2. There's also the possibility now of rook e8 for taking here, King d7 protects the e8 square. Check. Forcing rook e8 now. Knight e7. But now rook e d8, the rooks connect for d7. Knight c6, check. Picking up yet another pawn. Black, from the position I've asked you, is just, he was seemingly resourceful getting his rook out, but he's lost 2 pawns already. He's now 2 pawns down. Bishop e7, rook e3. These 2 rooks are having a field day. Now you might ask, yeah, the fragmentation of pawns has had an influence on that. Bishop d6, f4. And we've got a dangerous pass pawn all of a sudden. c4, king h2, bishop c5. Yeah, because c4 was threatening bishop c5. So the king gets out of the way. b4, rook e4. Another pawn is subject to scrutiny. Takes, takes. Bishop f2, counter-attacking. If black carries on like this, f5, we've got a dangerous pass pawn. So black counter-attacks, losing yet another pawn. Remember, this is only a double pawn though, it's part of just double pawns. Okay, so king h3, bishop e1, a4, knight a5, check. And this is a big advantage now for white after what was played. Best apparently is king c6, but it's a difficult position for black after rook b8. This is a difficult position for black. But black hastens to the end here with king c5. In this position, rook f5 check is picking up the knight. Black's just collapsed, immediately losing with king c5. Yeah, he should have played king c6. So this, he has to resign. He's losing that pawn knight. Simply, there's no compensation here. There's no check. We just bring the king back. So his best would have been, yeah, he just faltered here. This is at move 45, so king c6. This position here is engine's giving it a slightly, you know, it's good for white, +1, but it's easier to play for white. Black has still 2 pawns. If black's a nuisance driving the king back, this position, it looks horrible actually for black. It looks as though the rooks are still, yeah, these pieces are not very well coordinated. Black is now threatened with, you know, check here and mating nets and losing this pawn and 2 connected pass pawns. It's not very pleasant to play at all. I'm not entirely sure Polgievsky ever beat Kasparov, coming to think about it. I've never actually looked that up. I'm just going to look that up on chessgames.com. Did he actually ever beat Kasparov? Ever? Like, I mean, he was like an established grandmaster. I'm going to tell you the match score between them. Maybe they had some draws. Kasparov beat Polgievsky 4-0 with 4 draws. So the draws were around 1981, 1982, 1991. There was a draw also in 1975. Okay, yeah, 4-0. I thought it was quite heavy in Kasparov's favour. So yeah, this is one of the early Polgievsky encounters. It's just a very difficult position to play. I think that the 2 minor pieces didn't really have a chance, but that's interesting evaluation that white has you know, to sort of make a note of the nuances here, that actually this debate here about the two pieces versus the rook in this particular position is in white's favour, it seems. I think you've got to be very specific about this, that, you know, very specific, like moves and variations, that here that it's the move rook d6 which secures actually in this particular position an advantage for white. Without the specifics, I think the argument could have it'd be hard to make. So yeah, it's a very interesting position. In general, you don't want to like give up two pieces just to get a rook. Yeah. Okay, so so those are the three games I wanted to show you tonight, and I hope you got something out of them. And I'll make sure for future ones we're not using Fritz for the endgame analysis. that was a bit awkward. I'm sorry about that. Funny but awkward. Okay, so I hope you have a good week, and the over the board club season should be starting in a couple of months. I'm looking forward to that as well. Hope you guys are, if you play over the board. So have a good week, and see you next week. Okay, comments, questions, likes appreciated on YouTube. Thanks very much.